In this hot sourdough quick tip, we're going to show you 6 ways to strengthen your sourdough starter. If you've been away or planning a vacation, if you have a new starter and it's not super active or not acting the way you think it should, if you've forgotten to feed your starter, or even if you just don't want to deal with it for a while, a strong, vital, and active sourdough starter is the key to success for all sourdough baking. It's a more powerful leaven and will give your breads a better rise, a better crumb, and an overall better tasting sourdough. The first way to strengthen your starter is to adjust the feed schedule. When adjusting, you feed and allow it to rest and recover on the countertop while you're strengthening it. Feed it at the right time versus more often, and this takes time and patience. The best time to feed your starter is when it's at its peak activity. If you're really not sure how to tell if your starter's at its peak activity, check out our video here and it will show you everything you need to know. The next strengthening tip is to adjust the feed ratio. When a starter is not as active, the culture is not as strong, and there's not as many live microorganisms to feed. We like to start with a feed with more starter and less food, wait until the starter reaches its peak activity, and then slowly decrease the amount of starter and increase the amount of food with the next few feedings. As I've mentioned previously, making a rise timer is incredibly helpful for this because you know exactly how much to feed your starter and how long it will take to peak. Here you can see to adjust the feed ratio. With the first feed, we have more starter and less food. An example ratio would be 5 parts starter to 1 part flour, 1 part water. Then with each following feed, we slowly decrease the amount of starter and increase the amount of food relative to starter. An example feed schedule to minimize waste is to feed every time that your starter reaches its peak activity, starting with a ratio of 5:1:1, and on the last feed, 1:5:5. If you're confused about what these ratios mean, just check out my quick tips here and they'll explain everything you need to know about ratios. The third way to strengthen your sourdough starter is to add more oxygen by mixing. Adequate oxygen levels promote metabolism and reproduction of the microorganisms in your culture. It also redistributes those microorganisms, ensuring that all parts of the mixture have access to the nutrients and conditions necessary for fermentation. Mixing can also prevent stratification or separation, where the heavier components of the starter may settle at the bottom and the lighter components rise to the top. This can lead to uneven fermentation and inconsistent results in baking. This is why I recommend to stir at each feeding for 2 minutes and then cover with a cloth secured with an elastic band rather than an airtight lid. Starters love superfoods, so using a fresh organic food source like changing your flour to a fresh organic flour really helps. I also highly recommend to mill your own flours. I have some videos here to show you how. Try lowering the hydration of your feed. If your starter has been neglected, it can be runny because of increased hooch production. So feeding it a lower hydration, meaning less water, gives a thicker consistency, and it's easier to see the bubbles form and the rise happen. But don't worry, it will not affect the starter's hydration level permanently. After 1 or 2 feeds, you should switch back to your normal hydration level. It's quite easy to feed a lower hydration. All you really need to do is add a little extra flour. But once your starter is strengthened, just return back to passing the jiggle test. If you haven't already done so, make sure you check your water source as it greatly impacts your starter's health. Starters need minerals in the water and they need the temperature of the water to be room temperature or slightly above. Good sources are filtered water or tap water, but it must sit on the counter for 12 to 24 hours, as this will allow any chlorine in the water to gas off. If you're having any troubles with your starter, make sure you're not using carbon-filtered water such as a Brita filter, distilled water, or reverse osmosis water, as these sources of water are not conducive with a healthy starter. Just like I always say, our starters are like humans. They love a complete refresh. So if your starter seems to have no consistent activity or is just giving you a lot of trouble, try out this complete refresh. But I recommend doing this separately and also feeding another jar as you normally would as a backup. To completely refresh your starter, discard all but about 5 grams of your starter and do a refresh feed of about 1:10:10 ratio. It may take some time for your starter to reach its full potential, but don't get discouraged if it seems slow at first. With consistent feeding and care, it will strengthen over time. A new starter really needs 3 or 4 months for the culture of microorganisms to gain strength and stability. So keep going. It will get stronger, I promise. And the reward? Amazing sourdough bakes like incredible tasting breads with an increased rise, amazing crumb, and a perfect balance of flavor. By following these steps and being consistent with your feeding schedule, you'll have a strong and healthy sourdough starter ready to use in your baking adventures. So let's go make some sourdough. Check out all of our incredibly delicious and free recipes at TUMERICMeCrazy.com. And stick with me because in our next quick tip, I'm going to share with you how to prepare your sourdough starter if you're traveling or if you just need a break. And if you've enjoyed these quick tips, please give us a like and a positive comment and subscribe to our channel to find out when our next videos come out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.